Welcome to the April 16th Sandag Transportation Committee meeting. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next, I'm going to ask our clerk, Ms. Francesca Webb, to confirm that we have a quorum. Ms. Clerk? Ms. Francesca.
Thank you, Chair. We do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to remind the members and public on our process for both member and public comments. The primary members will be using their cameras and we will take live public comments. Members are asked to turn on their cameras when they have a comment or question, and then I will then recognize you. I'll ask our legal counsel, Ms. Amberlin, to provide a quick reminder of how the public comments will work. Please, Ms. Amberlin.
Thank you, Chair. As noted on the cover page of today's meeting agenda, in addition to emailed comments, the public may also provide live comments during the meeting. When public comments are called for on an item, please click on the raise hand icon in the Zoom toolbar, which is located on the top right of your screen. The clerk will then call on you by the name you have provided. If you're participating by telephone, please press *9, which will raise your hand to indicate your desire to speak. The clerk will then call on you by the last 3 digits of your number. The instructions for providing live comments are also on the bottom of the cover page of today's meeting agenda, which can be accessed from Sandag's website at www.sandag.org. All comments, whether they are emailed in advance or live, will be made a part of today's meeting record. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Amberlin. All right, item number 1, public comments, communications, member comments. Public comments under this agenda item will be limited to 5 public speakers. Members of the public shall have the opportunity to address the Transportation Committee on any issue within the jurisdiction of Sandag that is not in this agenda. Public speakers are limited to 3 minutes or less per person. Committee members are also paid to provide information and announcements under this agenda item. If the number of public comments under this agenda exceeds 5, additional public comments will be taken at the end of the agenda. Subjects of previous agenda items will not again be addressed under public comment. I'll ask any members of the public who wish to speak at this time.
Chair, I don't see any hands from the public.
All right, thank you very much. Seeing no raise hands, any comments from the committee members? Oh, okay, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over.
Chair, I'm sorry, I do see Gustavo's hand up.
Oh, Gustavo.
Yes, thank you, Chair Vargas, and good morning, members of the Transportation Committee. I have a couple of quick announcements. The first one is related to our ongoing cleanup on State Route 163. As many of you know, over the past few weekends, while many San Diegans are getting their rest, our maintenance forces have been out on State Route 163 doing all sorts of activities, including fixing potholes, guardrail, bridges, vegetation, and very important, picking up litter. Tomorrow will be the last weekend, the last Saturday that we're on 163. We will complete our cleanup in the northbound direction. During the month of May, we plan to take this kind of weekend activity to State Route 94 and perform similar cleanups along State Route 94. And this is part of our ongoing commitment to make sure that all of our state highways are clean. And along those lines, next week will be Earth Day, and on the next Thursday, we will be having all of our maintenance forces, regardless of the jobs that they routinely do, out in force on all of our highways picking up litter. And on Saturday, we will be joining the Conservation Corps and state parks to perform a special cleanup on the Silver Strand on State Route 75 near the State Beach. So that, again, is part of our ongoing commitment to have our highways clean and make sure that the litter doesn't end up on our waterways. The other announcement that I wanted to make is that last week we were busy coordinating with Sandag, Port of San Diego, and NCTD submittals for community projects. We were happy to write letters of recommendation for projects that Sandag that are very important to Sandag, like the Central Mobility Hub, like the Del Mar Bluffs, like the Lossan Rail Corridor, and also for projects that are important to the port, like Harbor 2.0 Caltrans ourselves, we submitted 2 projects for consideration by the congressional members. One of them is the San Diego Coronado suicide prevention barrier for the bridge. And the other one is the Otay Mesa East port of entry. So we will keep our fingers crossed for all of those projects. Hopefully they will get funding through that new process, earmark process. And last but not least, I will mention that at the end of the month, we will be celebrating National Work Zone Awareness Week and also our annual Highway Worker Memorial event. That's when we recognize all of the highway workers that have lost their lives in the line of duty. This year, unfortunately, we will be remembering 2 of our extended transportation family that lost their lives last November and December. Construction workers working for contractors, making our roads better for all of us, that lost their lives on State Route while working on State Route 94. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, I am going to turn it over to our Executive Director, Hassan.
Thank you, Chair Vargas. Good morning, Vice Chair Campillo. Good morning, committee members. Good to be with you today, and wish you happy Good Friday. A few things that are important for this committee to be aware of. One, on the Central Mobility Hub, notice of preparation is going out next week. It's exciting. It's finally here. This, as I told the committee members before, and I'm sure we're going to be talking to you shortly, this is about making San Diego International not the only airport, major airport in urban areas that's connect rail to the airport. In September 2019, the board approved the recommendation of the airport subcommittee that will connect transit to San Diego International. We envision the Central Mobility Hub would also connect transit from all over the region. And it's key to the Mobility Hub concept in 2020 regional plan. This is envisioned to be the largest mobility hub, the second largest being in San Isidro, and connecting the 2 with rail and connecting the 2 airports, San Diego International and TIJ with rail, would makes it actually operate as an airport system for both Baja California and California. During the last year, we have worked on many preliminary concepts. The release of the notice of preparation next week begins the CEQA environmental process. As I told the committee last time, last year, State Assembly Todd Gloria, you probably know this guy, who's now the mayor of the city, authored the 2731, which is a CEQA streamlining bill, first of its kind in the history of San Diego, second in California, that would allow us to move in a certain way that provide streamlining as we move forward in the environmental work. We have several alternatives that we're looking at for a hub. One is what we call the intermodal transportation system by the Old Town. It's near Washington and Pacific Highway, along Washington and Pacific Highway. And the second is the Navy Old Town campus, which is home to NAVWAR headquarters. I am pleased to report to you that we're working really well with our partners from the Navy. There is I think you remember Joe Stuyvesant. He was replaced by Dennis Keck, who's an amazing man, and we have met several times, and we have a commitment to continue collaborating on that option. We'll also consider a trolley extension to the airport as an alternative. This project is not only important from a transportation standpoint, but from an environmental standpoint, from economic standpoint. I urge you to be involved in this as we make this one of the 5 priorities for the agency. We spoke to our congressional delegation, and we hope that this kind of project with Otay 2 and LOSSAN will gain some national significance and national funding. On the regional plan, I think our staff has spoken to the committee and will continue to speak to the committee more. Last week, Board of Directors, we discussed transportation technologies that are transforming future mobility for our regional plan. What was once the norm 20 years ago no longer works. So our 5 big moves is gonna contain future mobility aspects, rely on technology solutions that didn't exist 20 years ago. So I hope none of you will be surprised when the draft regional transportation plan is released that there will be a different list of investment than we're used to. It's no longer going to be about highways versus transit, but it's a multimodal system that's going to transform the region, reimagine the future transportation in the region. I ask Chair Vargas and Vice Chair Campillo and all of you for this committee to do what this committee is supposed to do, and that is to take this discussion, create the public policy debate, and recommend to the board a regional transportation plan that truly will reimagine the system. The next board presentation is planned for April 23rd. I hope if you don't have anything better to do, to be there. We're going to talk about social equity, which is an important pillar of this plan. As you know, our board adopted social equity statement. Thank you all for participating. But the statement is a statement, need to follow by action, need to follow by criteria. Our staff are developing. And next week at the board, we're going to have nationally recognized experts talk about how we incorporate social equity and social justice into our transportation planning. Otay Mesa 2 port of entry. Today, this afternoon, Otay Mesa Peace Development Project team is providing a tour for our U.S. Consulate General in Tijuana, Sue Sereno. We appreciate the Consul General involvement and her ability to connect us with our partners in Mexico. Last pre-COVID, she was instrumental in organizing meetings for myself and Gustavo with our ambassador, and we're going to do the same once we're able to travel. Caltrans and Sandag this is not new to Caltrans and Sandag, and I want to thank Gustavo and his team. We're collaborating, coordinating. We think this is within reach. We think we can open a state-of-the-art facility by September 2024. And as I talked to our chairwoman, Supervisor Vargas, we need every bit of leadership to move this, because this is really important for not only the 2 regions, but for the country and for the state of California. We truly are aiming to create a 21st century border crossings for the San Diego, Baja California mega region that will enhance mobility, economic, and binational trade, and will be sustainable environmentally. On the Del Mar Bluff, our crews are still working. I'm sorry for those who are experiencing some closures and some discomfort, but progress have a cost. Bear with us. We had the full closure between Oceanside and downtown San Diego while crews continue this weekend. We're going to have a few closures, but we continue to repair the bluff temporarily. We're partnering with NCTD, City of Del Mar, California State Park, Sheriff's Department to make sure beachgoers are aware of the collapse, that the safety issues with it. The emergency work will continue until July. Long term, as I told you many times, and I'm going to say it again, this region must commit to moving the tracks inland. Yes, it's costly. Yes, it's going to take time, but temporary solutions and fighting nature is never a good strategy. So I would hope that this region will commit to that. The Mid-Coast, the largest infrastructure project in San Diego, is moving on schedule, on time. You're going to see these beautiful red cars operating trial runs in the summer, and the system will open to riders later this year. This is truly is going to be transformational. I'm also happy to report, as my colleague from MTS, Sharon Khoury, reported, that we're now, our transit ridership up to 50% what it was pre-COVID, which is significant. It's slowly, we're slowly getting transit ridership back. I also think Gustavo could confirm or not, but the traffic is, in some places back to pre-COVID, 90%, 95%. So unfortunately, many of us who enjoyed free flow probably won't enjoy it for a long time. I want you to know that this region should be ready to celebrate the Midwest when it's open. And this region is ready for our President Biden's next stimulus when it comes. This region is positioned to compete well. And we're ahead of the curve. We have started with the 5 big moves, all the ideas that the President plan talks about. Madam Chair, that concludes my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Hassan, for such a thorough report. Before I go to the members, are there any public members who have any comments?
No, Chair, I don't see any hands from the public.
All right, seeing none, Mr. Benelli.
Thank you, Chair Vargas, members of the committee. Hassan, thanks for the report. Did I hear you correctly? As part of the vision for the Big 5 moves, are we going to attempt to connect by rail San Diego International Airport and Rodriguez Airport down in Tijuana?
Yes. Here is the way the plan stands right now. There is a direct connection, it's via subway connection underground between the Central Mobility Hub and San Isidro that will go to CBX, then connect to Otay 2, to connect to San Isidro and Otay 2. Yes, there will be a rail connection. It will make it seamless. But the reason this is important is, I'm sure you travel London Airport, Heathrow. To go from one terminal to another, it takes you more than it would take you to go by rail from San Diego International to TIG. It's an idea that I think both sides of the border think is a great idea.
I think so too. So thank you for putting that in the vision.
Sure.
Thank you, Chair.
Welcome, Mr. Cabrera.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Hassan, for the update. And I was excited to hear about the progress on the connection to San Diego International Airport. We are obviously very excited about this possibility. I know our team has been working extensively and hard with your team. And I look forward to that collaboration continuing to get this thing done and get us connected in some way to the system so that we can have yet another win for the region and making sure that our airport is as functional as possible for all San Diegans. So thank you so much for that update. I look forward to seeing the progress as it comes along, and anything I can do to help, please do feel free to let me know.
Councilmember Caprero, thank you for your leadership, and thanks to your staff. I think for all of you, this project is going to take every bit of every one of us to make it right. But I also want to, because you mentioned this, very soon, I would hope, if you haven't done already, we would like to do briefings for your offices so you're ahead of the game. Because once we start the environmental work, this is when we need the leadership to be aware of what's going on in the airport. But thank you very much for you and your staff.
All right, moving on to the consent agenda. If a member would like to pull any items of the consent agenda, or if you have any questions or comments on any consent items, please let me know. Are there anyone? All right, seeing none, we are going to, we don't have any comments. Okay, so the next is.
Chair, I do see Councilmember Montgomery Stepp has her hand up.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Chair Vargas. I am happy to move the consent agenda if that is needed. I just wanted to briefly touch on the CIP item number 6. As we kind of talk about social equity, I just want to make sure that there, if there is not already one, there is a community advisory process for input on the projects. I know it's complicated with FTA deadlines, but I think that should be a part of our discussion as we talk about the future. There are things I think can be done more immediately that the community can comment on. And I don't know if staff has any reaction to that, but that's pretty much all that I wanted to say. And I'm happy to move the consent agenda. Thank you.
Zito will second.
Fantastic. Does the staff have any information on that?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I think I can address this. I'm Jim Lunthick, I'm the head of the capital program. And we do, SANDAG does perform a Title VI analysis of this, but what item 6 is, it's the SANDAG blessing the transit agencies CIPs. And so that all that legwork of what goes into that CIP is usually the responsibility of both MTS and NCTD.
Okay. Thank you, Jim.
Okay, thank you. If there is no further discussion, may I have, we have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, can I go ahead and call the vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. For the San Diego County Regional Airport Authority, Gil Cabrera.
Cabrera's aye.
Thank you. For the City of San Diego, Vice Chair Campillo.
Yes.
Thank you. For the County of San Diego, Chair Vargas.
Yes.
Thank you. For East County, Councilmember Mendoza.
Yes.
Thank you. For Metropolitan Transit System, Councilmember Montgomery Stepp.
Yes.
Thank you. For North County Coastal, Councilmember Zito.
Zito, yes.
Thank you. For North County Inland, Mayor McNamara.
McNamara, aye.
Thank you. For North County Transit District, Councilmember Edson.
Edson, yes.
Thank you. For the Port of San Diego, Commissioner Benelli.
Benelli, yes.
Thank you. And for South County, Councilmember Sankey.
Sankey, yes.
Thank you very much, and that does pass unanimously.
Thank you. Just for the record, I'm just going to mention that there were no public comments either. So in case we missed that. Next is item number 7, the Regional Active Transportation Program funding recommendations. I am going to turn it over to Ms. Audrey Porcella for a presentation.
Thank you, Chair Vargas. My name is Audrey Porcella, and I will be sharing with you the results of the Regional Active Transportation Program FY 2021 competition. So as an overview, next slide, please. The Active Transportation Program, or ATP, was created by Senate Bill 99 and funds projects that encourage active modes of transportation, such as walking and biking. Project types include infrastructure projects, such as bike lanes, multi-use paths, sidewalks, etc., and non-infrastructure projects, such as plans, studies, and what's known as education, encouragement, and awareness, or EEA projects, which typically consist of campaigns, programs, and activities that promote walking and biking. Both project types may have a safe routes to school focus or components. Next slide. This slide provides an overview of the agencies involved in the ATP and their roles. The California Transportation Commission, or CTC, is the funding agency for the ATP and approves evaluation criteria and allocates funding. Caltrans helps administer the program and provides oversight of the grant-funded projects. SANDAG, as the MPO, or Metropolitan Planning Organization for the San Diego region, oversees the regional competition and is also eligible to apply for ATP funds. Because of this dual role, and to ensure that evaluation process is open and transparent and does not give advantage to SANDAG projects, SANDAG staff directly associated with developing SANDAG applications did not have a role in evaluating project applications or facilitating the competitive process. This was carried out by the SANDAG grants team. Next slide. This slide shows the breakdown of ATP funding. Funding for the ATP is split up into 3 pools of funding: statewide, which is represented in orange, regional and small, which is represented in purple, and small urban and rural, which is represented in blue. The small urban and rural is not applicable to the San Diego region. As in previous cycles, there are 4 years of funding available, FY 22 through 26. For the entire cycle 5 ATP, there's over $441 million available. 50% of these funds are distributed through the statewide competition. 10% are awarded to small urban and rural, And then the remaining 40% is allocated to the major metropolitan areas throughout the state to be distributed through regional competitions. Regional allocations are determined by population. So the slice of funding for the San Diego region is approximately 4% of the total ATP funding, or $16 million. The CTC requires that a minimum of 25% of the funds within each funding pool benefit disadvantaged communities, or what is known as DACs. The ATP is characterized as being incredibly oversubscribed, and that was certainly true this cycle. Next slide. The CTC received 454 projects requesting a total of $2.3 billion. You will recall from the last slide that only $441 million is available. Given this intense competition, only projects that scored 92 points or higher out of 100 were awarded funding. Of the 454, 41 projects were awarded funds. The image on the slide is a screenshot of the CTC's interactive map showing the statewide funding awards, so you can see the geographic distribution of funds through the statewide competition. The blue pinpoints are small urban and rural projects awarded funding, and the red pinpoints are the statewide projects awarded funding. 100% of the funding will benefit disadvantaged communities, or DACs. 23 of the 41 projects are considered Safe Routes to School projects, and these awards were approved by the CTC last month. Next slide. So within the statewide competition, the San Diego region submitted 37 projects, which totaled $120 million in requests. 4 projects from the region are being or have been awarded funding through the statewide competition. So to highlight these projects, they are the City of Oceanside's Laurel Elementary Safe Routes to School project, Sandag's Orange Avenue Family Friendly Street project, National City's Highland Avenue Intercity Bike Connection project, and the City of Imperial Beach's 9th Street Active Transportation Corridor project. Combined, the region was awarded $10.75 million in awards for San Diego regional projects, and the remaining projects submitted by the San Diego region are eligible to compete for funding through the regional competition. The results of this competition is what the TC is being asked to consider today. Next slide. So for background on the regional competition, the San Diego region has the opportunity to develop and adopt its own scoring criteria to reflect the special needs and priorities of the region. These criteria are different from the criteria used in the statewide competition, so projects will score differently in the regional competition than they had in the statewide competition. The Board of Directors adopted the regional ATP scoring criteria for Cycle 5 in March 2020, and the CTC approved it in June 2020. A local evaluation panel reviewed the applications and provided scores for qualitative criteria, and quantitative criteria were scored by the Sandag's Grant Division and an independent review of the scores, and formulas were carried out by Sandag's Quality Assurance team. Next slide. So based on the project rankings, one project, the Inland Rail Trail Gap Connector, also known as the VISTA segment, is recommended to receive a full funding award of approximately $12 million. The City of La Mesa's Bike and Sidewalk Connection project is recommended to receive a partial funding award of approximately $4 million. And the Grants Division staff has spoken with the City of La Mesa to confirm that they are able to use the partial funding award to complete the project as originally proposed with no changes in the scope. All $16 million in the regional funding pool will benefit disadvantaged communities, which exceeds the CTC minimum requirement of 25%. Projects not recommended for funding are included in the contingency list, which is in attachment 3. Should additional funds become available, these funds will be distributed to the next highest ranked project on the contingency list. Next slide. So to go into a little bit more detail on our winners, the recommended $12 million in grant funding to the Inland Rail Trail Gap Connector project will construct 2.2 miles of Class 1 separated bikeway along the Sprinter corridor in the city of Vista, and that is shown in the inset on the map at right. The project will close a gap in the 14-mile inland rail trail, a priority project as identified in the San Diego Regional Bike Plan. Next slide. The nearly $4 million recommended for funding the La Mesa Bike and Sidewalk Connections project will support construction of 11.3 miles of Class 2 bike lanes, 4.1 miles of Class 3 bike routes, new sidewalk to close a gap in the sidewalk network, and 7 new pedestrian crossings. Funds will also support studies and community outreach for 8 future active transportation projects. So the map on this slide, it's a bit hard to make out, but all of the green call boxes are indicating locations where there will be a bike project. The blue is sidewalk projects, and then very, very faint, if you see the dashed lines, are the projects that are non-infrastructure projects that are the studies and community outreach for future projects. Next slide. So the next steps in this process is pending the Transportation Committee's recommendation today. The Board of Directors will be asked to consider the funding recommendations at their next meeting, which is on Friday. Pending their approval, staff will submit the regional funding recommendations and contingency list to the CTC. The CTC will consider the regional funding recommendations at its June 23rd, 24th meeting. Following the CTC's approval, the board will be asked to consider budget amendments and amendments to the RTIP to include ATP funds for the 2 SANDAG projects, the Orange Family Friendly Street project that was successful in the statewide competition, and the Inland Rail Trail Gap Connector project recommended for funding through the regional competition. So the action before you today, next slide. The Transportation Committee is asked to recommend that the Board of Directors, 1, adopt resolution number 2021-18, certifying the results of the San Diego Regional Active Transportation Program, ATP, and 2, recommend that the California Transportation Commission fund the San Diego Regional ATP projects consistent with attachment 3. That concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Priscilla. Are there any public comments at the moment, Madam Clerk?
No, Chair, there are no hands from the public.
Any member comments? No, okay. May I have a motion to recommend this item?
Sankey, move approval.
Thank you.
Zito will second.
Who was the second?
Zito.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, may you call the vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. For the San Diego County Regional Airport Authority, Gil Cabrera.
Yes.
Thank you. For the City of San Diego, Vice Chair Campillo.
Yes.
Thank you. For the County of San Diego, Chair Vargas.
Vargas, yes.
Thank you. For East County, Councilmember Mendoza.
Yes.
Thank you. For Metropolitan Transit System, Councilmember Montgomery Stepp.
Yes.
Thank you. For North County Coastal, Councilmember Zito.
Zito, yes.
Thank you. For North County Inland, Mayor McNamara.
McNamara, yes.
Thank you. For North County Transit District, Councilmember Edson.
Edson, yes.
Thank you. For the Port of San Diego, Commissioner Benelli.
Benelli, yes.
Thank you. And for South County, Councilmember Sankey.
And with recommendations of the fantastic job by staff on that presentation, Sankey is a yes.
Thank you very much. And that does pass unanimously.
Thank you. Item number 9 is the Los Angeles San Diego San Luis Obispo Rail Corridor Improvement Study Update. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Linda Culp.
Thank you, Chair Vargas and members of the committee. Good morning. Here to present item 8, which is an update on our Losan Regional Rail Corridor improvement study. I have some co-presenters today with me is Hamish Pollock-Frazier, and he's with Deutsche Bahn on our consultant team, and he's our rail operations specialist. And then also Mark Ramsey, he's with Mott McDonald, also on our team, and he's our tunnel specialist. I also have some members from HDR, Rob Klofsky, Kim McGee, and Robert Yates to assist with any questions that you have. Next slide. First, to go over a little background, next slide. In terms of what we are studying along our coastal rail corridor, or LOSSAN corridor, we're looking at different alignment alternatives, analyzing those, as well as a number of proposed improvements to the rail corridor, all around three objectives. And that is to reduce travel times, increase the capacity on the corridor so that we can add additional rail service, and then enhance the safety. And we have a few overarching documents that help us here. We have the regional transportation plan, and being consistent with the 5 big moves, and specifically the Transit Leap move. And then also our North Coast corridor is our comprehensive multimodal corridor plan. And so we're taking the next step beyond that CMCP and diving deeper into the LOSSAN corridor. Next slide. In terms of what we are looking at, we have been working for about 8-9 months now. And on the left-hand side of the slide are some of those base documents that we need before we really get started on the alignment alternatives in terms of operations, some basis of design documents for the railroad. And you can see those have been drafted. And then over on the right-hand side, really we've been focusing for a while now on the Del Mar alternative alignments. That is that long-term realignment study that Hassan mentioned in his executive director report when he was talking about the bluff stabilization. And we're also looking at tunnel alternatives in the Miramar Hill, and we'll talk about those more today in the presentation. And a little bit later this year, we'll be looking at the rest of the LOSSAN corridor to see what other travel time benefits that we can gain from improvements. Next slide. We have some reporting structure. We have a project development team that's been with us for about 8 months now, meeting regularly and diving into the technical details. And you can see the member agencies listed there that have been helping us. In addition, we have an executive leadership task force that is representatives from the federal, the state, the regional level, elected officials, our executive management team, and we were able to brief the task force on Monday, and very good participation and good discussion from that group, as well as the Sandag Board of Directors, and we'll be providing an update to the full board next month. Next slide. So one of the first basic questions that we wanted to ask was, is it even feasible to operate higher speed service on our LOSSAN corridor? And with that, I'll turn to Hamish to go over some of the details of the operational feasibility.
Thank you, Linda. The operational feasibility aspect of this study looked at 4 key themes. The first was to evaluate the trends in vehicle technology, looking at higher speed diesel locomotives and new electrification solutions, such as zero emissions units. The second aspect was to understand with a higher confidence level the travel time savings that could be expected from the tunnels and from upgrading the alignment, in conjunction with prior studies commissioned by Sandag and its partners, the Lausanne Rail Corridor Agency. And third and fourth, also understanding the other items of importance, such as the changes of communication, for example, the signaling system, an understanding of what the near-term risks to operations would be, as well as in conjunction with the wider Sandag plans, understanding what the Sorrento Mesa mobility hub could look like and how tunneling alignments could match both the existing corridor to this new proposal here. Today, I will report on the first 2 items, the higher speed rail vehicles aspect and also the travel time savings. Next slide, please. To give you a brief understanding of what we're talking about with the tunnel and the corridor rather, the rail corridor has been extensively studied in the past by Sandag and Caltrans, etc. The Sandag has actually got an infrastructure development plan which has outlined really key important projects to upgrade the alignment, removing bottlenecks for traffic and improving station access to passengers. So for example, what's being proposed here and what's assumed are that all the upgrades on the infrastructure development plan that was commissioned by Sandag will be complete in advance of the tunnel. This would include the Delmar special events platform, potentially then the new UTC station that would come with one of the tunnel upgrades, and as mentioned earlier, the San Diego International Airport station as well. This all means that actually there are only two bottlenecks on the corridor. There are the Delmar Bluffs, which, as you've seen in the news, are at risk of failure and require repair, and also the Miramar Hill, which is just south of Sorrento Valley Station. It is a slow portion of the corridor, it is a bottleneck, and it also has risk from stabilization, etc. And lastly, the final thing is that the corridor at the moment can support 90 miles an hour. With upgrades, this could be raised to 110 miles an hour. So all of these have been looked at in relation to how the corridor could improve from a travel time saving point of view. Next slide, please. The infrastructure is half of the equation. The other half are the vehicles. And we are investigating two families of vehicles. The first is the new diesel locomotives that are coming into service for both the Pacific Surfliner and the Coaster. These are the Siemens Charger. They are state of the art and are able to run at 125 miles an hour. That's their top speed. They will be pulling two types of service. The current day Pacific Surfliner, which is referenced as a limited stop service, as it only stops at Oceanside, Solana Beach, and San Diego, as well as the Old Town. And the Coaster service, which is all stop. The Surfliner service, however, is limited by the speed limit of its cars. The Pacific Surfliner cars are rated to 110 miles an hour, whereas the Coaster cars, the new Bombardier cars, are rated to 90 miles an hour. So those are the limiting factors on the locomotive point of view. The second family of trains we're exploring is the zero emissions trains. Now, this here is fairly open-ended in what the final train could look like and its fuel solution. On the one hand, it could be a train powered by hydrogen technology, it could be a train powered by batteries, or it could be a train that's electrified in another way. The key thing here is that these trains are very modern, they are 110 miles an hour capable, and secondly, they have very good acceleration and deceleration capabilities, which is important for all stop services. Next slide, please. Within the test, then we have an example of what the outputs look like. So here on screen is just an example of a distance speed diagram. And the three lines you can see are, firstly in blue, the maximum line speed, which is 110 miles an hour. And then the second two lines, or curves really show the performance of the different vehicles. The red line there is the zero emissions unit, the ZMU. And the green line is the higher speed diesel locomotive. And you can see that it passes from left to right, from Oceanside to San Diego, through two tunnels, the Delmar Tunnel in yellow and the Miramar Tunnel in the red shading. There are two things really to draw from this. The first thing is that the ZMU has much better acceleration characteristics. You can see that through the steeper curve as it gets up to 90 or even 110 miles an hour. Whereas the diesel, although its acceleration is good, it is limited by the gradient on the line, how steep the line is. You can see this by the roughness of the curve, for example, between Carlsbad and Poinsettia. And secondly, also then by its cars. This here is a model of an all-stop service, and the all-stop service is pulling cars rated for 90 miles an hour, so it can't reach line speed. Next slide, please. To conclude in the final few slides here, there are two sets of results. Here on screen, we have the results for an all-stop service, and on the next screen, you'll see one for a limited stop service. On the top right-hand corner, you'll see the stopping pattern, Oceanside to San Diego, stopping at the airport, which is now modeled, and then the Sorrento Valley station here is modeled as the UTC or Nobel station, whatever the future station there will be. The graph itself is split into two aspects. The top half shows results on the diesel locomotives, and then the bottom half below the line shows the ZMU. And the first line there shows the current speed and current travel time on the current alignment. So we can see that today, the timetable today could support travel times of about 56 minutes. As soon as you build the 2 tunnels, you're saving 10 minutes of travel time by the fact that you can run at 110 miles an hour and that the alignment is that much shorter. You'll then see that actually the 90 miles an hour and the 110 miles an hour are very similar, in fact the same for the diesel locomotive. This is because the cars that the train is pulling can only reach 90 miles an hour, whereas the ZMU starts to get more time gains. For example, 39 minutes if we run it at 90 miles an hour and 110 if we raise it to the line speeds. And these additional minute savings are coming from the acceleration and deceleration performance of the train. So in total, we're approaching almost 20 minutes travel time saving in theory if we compare back to the current alignments if we're implementing the state-of-the-art ZMU train. In the next slide, we have very similar results for the limited stop service. Next slide, please. Here we can see that the limited stop service runs in theory on the alignment today with 48 minutes from Oceanside to San Diego, with a stop at Solana Beach and then a stop at the airport, although you can also interpret that as the Old Town Station. And here we can see that there are, again, the same travel time savings of roughly 10 minutes through the tunnel. And then at 90 miles and 110 miles an hour for the diesel service, we're seeing slight improvements as the train limited stop can reach 110 miles an hour. The Pacific Surfliner cars are rated for a higher speed. However, again, the ZMU, with its higher acceleration and deceleration rates, is able to win a little bit more time. And again, we have the ability to reduce travel times by approximately 18 minutes for limited stop services. Next slide, please. So to conclude there, 110 miles an hour is a very good speed to be aiming for on the corridor, especially if the equipment is upgraded in the future, for example, in the next 20 years when the tunnels come online. At present, the Pacific Surfliner with its diesel pooled cars can achieve the 110 miles an hour, but to get maximum benefit, it's worth really considering the ZMU solution due to its higher performance characteristics. There are freight and other safety concerns that will be in the process of being considered. The freight runs at a lower speed and it needs separation times between the diesel or ZMU solution, which we're currently investigating. Another aspect is that 110 miles an hour is also important as it's a limit from the FRA safety point of view with regards to how the corridor is sealed. We're investigating all of these things and we will be providing further reports as the study continues. In the wider scheme of things though, and this is really characterized in the fourth image there, the fourth slide, we're upgrading the corridor between San Diego, the county line, down to the depot. However, there is a very large bottleneck at San Clemente single track, which limits throughput as well as speed. And as San Diego SANDAG continues to push through state-of-the-art tunnels and track infrastructure, vehicle solutions, they should also ensure that north of the county line, that the San Clemente bottleneck is also resolved to ensure that there is benefit across the entire corridor. Thank you.
Thanks, Hamish. Appreciate it. Would like to talk a little bit now about the specific alignments that we see both for Del Mar and Miramar. And what you see here, first of all, is to talk about the Del Mar realignment alternatives. And just to orient you on the map, north is looking towards the left-hand of the slide, and you can just see on the left hand of the image the fairgrounds, the Del Mar Fairgrounds. So we start there and move our way south through the city of Del Mar along 5 proposed alignment alternatives. And I'll just describe them very quickly. First in red is a Camino Del Mar tunnel. This was proposed in an earlier concept study to largely follow the roadway. What we've done now to speed up that alignment, we've put that in a tunnel now, and we've straightened out some of the curves. So you can see the black line near the red line underneath that. That was the original alignment, and we have made some refinements. As we have with the other alignments, we have 3 alternatives through the Crest Canyon, or the middle of the graphic there in yellow, first being the higher speed alternative. And then we have 2 alternatives that are represented in the blue line. And one goes above Carmel Valley Road, that's sort of in the right-hand area of the slide, and then one goes below. And then lastly, the 5th alignment is the green alignment, and that's along I-5. And the stars represent some proposed portal locations, and that's where, if we're on the train, we would enter and exit the actual tunnel portion of the alignment. Next slide. So to give you some analysis that we have run so far on those 5 alignments, first column there is the maximum speed for passenger and then freight trains. And so, for example, Hamish mentioned today, passenger trains can run up to 90 miles an hour. Freight can run up to 60 miles an hour. So that's how you read that column. And then you can see that all of the alignment alternatives, with the exception of I-5, reach our operational feasibility speed of 110 for passengers, and all of them make the 60 mile an hour maximum speed for freight. We've done some very high level capital cost comparison so far, and if we consider the Camino del Mar tunnel to be our base cost, and you can see how the other alignments compare to that, with the I-5 alignment being the longest, also being the most costly in terms of capital. And then there's a few columns over to the right-hand side of the slide that talk to you about travel time. And these are minutes from the Solana Beach station to the Old Town station. And right now, that all-stop service, or our coaster trains, that trip takes about 31 minutes. And you can see with the Charger diesel locomotive that Hamish mentioned, we would see a travel time savings of a couple of minutes for most of the alternatives, a little bit longer for I-5, 29.6 minutes. And then for the zero emission, or the ZMU, for all stop, additional time savings consistent with that operational feasibility analysis. And then for the limited stop, that's our Pacific Surfliner service. Again, 32 minutes travel time today. And you can see how that improves under Charger, both a diesel locomotive, but also more so for the zero emission with the Del Mar Tunnel. Next slide. The project development team has been a great resource for us, going through all the technical details with us. And one of the things we did with that group was put together some evaluation criteria that we use to apply to each of the 5 alternatives. And you can see those criteria listed here. And what we've highlighted are the ones that we also attach the highest weights to. So for the PDT, the project development team, what was most important out of all of these? We're going to use all of these, but what was kind of should be ranked higher, and things like safety, travel time, travel demand, and operations and maintenance costs were rated higher. Next slide. So we took these criteria, we took the weights, and then we applied it to all 5 of the alignment alternatives. Next slide, please. And so what you see are the evaluation criteria, the weights, and then a rating of 1, or the red bulb being the worst, and 5, or the green bulb, being the highest rated. And you can kind of just draw your eye to which ones get more red, which ones get more green. And so we went through each of the criteria and each of the 5 alternatives, and then we end up with a total score for each alignment. And so you can see what we have concluded in this analysis is that the higher speed Crest Canyon, that got the most points, and the I-5 alignment got the least points. And so what we propose to carry forward into additional study is the highest ranking of the 3 Crest Canyon, that would be the higher speed, and then the Camino del Mar alignment, also that ranked up in the high in terms of scoring. Next slide. And then this just gives you a preliminary summary of some of the differences between the 5. We talked about cost already. The length, you can see there, they're all, between 4.5 and 5 miles in length. This is the project length, and that's basically from the San Diego Lagoon through to Sereno Valley. And then it's important to know how long each tunnel is. And at this point, you can see how that compares with that alignment below Carmel Valley through Crest Canyon being our longest actual tunnel segment. The tunnel depth is also very important. And again, at a preliminary level, you can see that some of them reach pretty deep, 480 feet, I believe, for the below Carmel Valley Road at the deepest point. And then we do have some structures to get us to and from the tunnel segments, and you can see how much would be an elevated structure for each of those. Next slide. So a couple of slides then turning our attention a little bit farther south from Del Mar, and this is in the University City area. Again, north is headed towards the left-hand side of the slide. And what we see is to the left-hand side is the Sereno Valley area. You can see, if you're familiar with the 5805 merge, you can see that in the left-hand side. And then for reference, we have painted on in orange our very near future Mid-Coast Light Rail Corridor. You can see coming up from Old Town and then accessing the university and the hospitals and then terminating at University Town Center. So we have two LOSSAN rail corridor alignments here. Mentioned that the corridor is maximum speed for passenger trains at 90 and 60, but this is the slowest section right now of our corridor from LA to San Diego. And right now, speeds generally going up the hill are about 20 miles, 25 miles an hour. So we propose a couple of tunnel alternatives to reduce those travel times. One is in purple, that's the University Town Center alignment, and you can see the portal locations for that. There would be a station with this alignment under UTC and providing that connection to Mid-Coast. And then we have a blue alignment, which we're calling the Torrey Pines alignment. And you can see that's farther to the west. You can see the proposed portal locations. And we are exploring the possibility of a connection with a Mid-Coast station for this alignment as well. If you click once, put on, or if you go to the next slide, you can see how similar data for these two alignments. So I mentioned the maximum speeds. We do reach 110 for each of these for passenger. Capital costs are very similar between the two. And then if you look at the travel time between Solana Beach and Old Town, very significant savings here with travel time with both of these tunnel alternatives. So there's that same 31-minute all stop for our coaster right now today between Solana Beach and Old Town. Under a diesel locomotive, that would go to 19 minutes, 20 minutes, and then you can see for zero emission, further time savings. And you see a similar analysis for the limited stop or the Surfliner trains. Next slide. We did apply that same criteria, the same weighting, and you can see how both of these alternatives fared under the scoring, fairly similar. We are not proposing to eliminate either one of these alignments at this point. It's a little too early in our analysis, so we'll be carrying both of these forward into future phases. Next slide. And lastly, just a preliminary summary of the Miramar alignments. And you can see very, very similar in terms of length, the tunnel length a bit different. The UTC tunnel is fairly deep at its deepest point, 245 feet, and significant elevated structures to get us there and get us out of the tunnel. Next slide. At this point, I would like to turn over to Mark Ramsey. He's our tunnel specialist with Mott McDonald.
Thank you, Linda. So first of all, I want to talk about the tunneling and fire life safety considerations, or fire life safety is sometimes referred to as FLS. In particular, with the tunneling considerations, I'm going to discuss the tunnel configurations, as well as tunnels in similar ground conditions. And then with fire life safety, the two biggest things are egress and ventilation that I'll be going through this morning. Thank you. Next slide. So the first of the tunnel configurations that we've studied is what's called a single bore approach, which is one large tunnel and both trains and both tracks within one tunnel. Like the picture on the side, on the left-hand side, you see is separated by a firewall to separate the different train zones. And then the picture in the lower right, there's a over and above configuration separated by a concrete slab that would separate the two tracks. Next slide. We're also studying a twin bore option. This is a very traditional approach to subway and transit systems. The two tunnels are separated by typically a tunnel diameter, so 20 to 30 feet in diameter, or 20 to 30 feet in between the two tunnels. And they're connected by cross passages that we'll talk about a little bit later in the fire life safety section. Next slide. There's also a triple bore option where that center tunnel can serve as maintenance access or emergency egress. It can also serve as ventilation. Typically, this is used for longer tunnels with very little access from the surface. So this was used on the channel tunnel that connects England and France, which obviously has very little access from above, and it's almost 30 miles long. Next slide. So this is a list of some of the tunnels in similar ground conditions. I mean, this could go on for a long time, but there are two in San Diego that are very similar ground conditions. One's Mission Valley East, which is for MTS, and then the Courthouse Commons Tunnel, which is downtown, that just completed excavation. Regional Connector in Los Angeles is also very similar ground conditions, as well as the Channel Tunnel and the Alaskan Way Viaduct in Seattle. Next slide, please. These are some of the pictures. So on the left-hand side is the Alaskan Way Viaduct, TBM completing excavation. At the time it did its excavation, it was the largest soft ground tunnel boring machine in the world at just over 57 feet in diameter. It's been eclipsed by a tunnel in Hong Kong by about 6 inches. So it's no longer the biggest, but it's certainly one of the largest in the world. The one in the middle is the Mission Valley East for MTS. And then the one on the right is the picture of Regional Connector in Los Angeles. Next slide. So one of the main considerations for fire life safety is egress. And on the slide it listed some of the reasons that egress is needed from a tunnel. If there happened to be a fire on the train or in the tunnel, you would need to escape from the fire. Typically subway systems are electrically powered, so leaving the train during a power outage. And then if there's a derailment or a train breakdown would be other reasons that you need egress. Next slide. So the means of egress, on the left-hand side is a picture of one half of a twin bore tunnel with the safety walk on the right-hand side. So that walkway is continuous through the tunnels, and that is the main mean of egress to get along the tunnel, out of the train and along the tunnel. The cross passages would simply be a doorway in the tunnel wall, and then it's a little mined cross passage between the two tunnels. So if there were a fire in this tunnel, you'd get off the train onto the walkway through the cross passage into the non-incident tunnel, and then either walk along that tunnel to a station or an exit, or wait for a rescue train to come get you. The NFPA, which the National Fire Protection Codes, which govern tunnels and transit agencies, also would allow an exit to the surface or the cross passages, and then the walkways and of course emergency signage and markings are required as well. Next slide. Ventilation is another key aspect of fire life safety that needs to be addressed in tunnels. And these are some of the reasons why ventilation is needed. The tunnels don't typically have any air conditioning systems, and typically the ventilation system isn't running all the time. So when the tunnels get hot, the fans will turn on and exhaust that heat out of the tunnels. With the diesel trains, there would be pollutants, nitrogen dioxide in the tunnels that would have to be exhausted as well. If there was a fire, the smoke would be controlled by ventilation systems. And then the NFPA code requires ventilation systems for tunnels longer than 1,000 feet. Next slide. And then this is one of the picture of a typical ventilation fan. This is like a 6 to 8 foot diameter fan, with the squares on the ends are sound attenuators to try to cut down some of the noise from the fans, because they're very loud when they operate, but the sound attenuators really cut that noise down. Next slide. And you can go one more. Yeah, thank you. So talk a little bit about tunnels with similar operation conditions. This tunnel would have freight and commuter trains in the same tunnels, and then the operations and maintenance considerations for rail tunnels. Next slide. So the list on the left are some of the US-based tunnels that have freight and commuter rails in the same tunnels. And then on the list on the right are some international tunnels. The international tunnels are fairly long. The Channel Tunnel, like I mentioned, is 30 miles. Goddard Base Tunnel is almost 60 kilometers, which would be 40 miles. Brenner Pass Tunnel is a little bit longer than Goddard, so it'll be the longest rail tunnel in the world when it gets operational. And Lochberg Tunnel in Switzerland is also fairly long. The international tunnels are also fairly recent. Channel Tunnel has been in operation for about 25 years. Goddard Base has been in operation for about 5 years now. And Brenner Pass is under construction. Next slide. So some of the key operation considerations for rail tunnels, the tunnel lighting stays on all the time while the trains are operating. So that's obviously a use of power. There's LED lights and other systems now that are being used to try to reduce the amount of energy consumed. The fans for ventilation are needed, and then pumps for track drains and any water ingress that needs to get pumped back out of the tunnel. The maintenance considerations, tunnels have a tendency to leak. We try to minimize it as much as possible, but there are some water ingress that needs to get maintained occasionally. And then checking, maintaining the track as well as the train control and systems within the tunnel are key maintenance considerations. Thank you, Linda.
Thanks, Mark. Next slide. Just to give you a last couple of pieces of information on our study so far is we are making a number of presentations similar to this one. This morning mentioned the previous couple with the PDT and the task force. We had a very good discussion with the Torrey Pines Community Planning Board last night. And then next week we'll be heading up to the NCTD Board of Directors, then to the Sandag Board next month, and then the Del Mar City Council in June. Next slide. And then lastly, just give you an overall idea of our study schedule. We have those kind of baseline building block documents drafted. We'll have those finished this summer. We'll be working and finishing up the Del Mar Tunnel alternatives analysis this summer as well. And then right behind that, the Miramar Hill Tunnel alternatives analysis. And then, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we'll turn our attention to the rest of the 60-mile San Diego corridor and what other improvements would be recommended. And we'll have cost estimates and that implementation plan about this time next year. We do not currently have funding to move on from this current study, but we continue to reach out to our federal delegation, our state delegation, and keep our eye out for any grants that come up. So with that, appreciate the time. I know it's a little bit longer presentation, but a lot of information to convey this morning, and I'm happy to take any comments or questions that you or the committee may have. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone for such a thorough presentation. I was excited about the tunnels. I have a good question before I turn it over to see if there's any public comments. What is the feedback that you received from the community planning groups that you've introduced this information to?
Yeah, so the one so far that we've talked a couple of times to, and then last night gave a similar presentation as this morning, was Torrey Pines. And yeah, they were very interested, a lot of discussion centered around potential environmental impacts, what happens in an earthquake, what will residents feel above these tunnels, will it vibrate, those kind of concerns. But I think I would say I'd summarize them up centered around any potential environmental impacts it might have.
I've had the privilege of using some of these tunnels out of the country, and it's just phenomenal. All right, so I'm going to turn it over first for public comments, and then I'll go to the members. Any public comments, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Chair. We do have a few public comments. I see 3 thus far. First will be Noah, who will be followed by Nicole Burgess.
Good morning, Chair and Board. This is Noah Harris with Climate Action Campaign urging Sandag to move the LOSSAN tracks off the Del Mar Bluffs as soon as possible. We thank the board and staff for working to identify alternative alignments through this corridor improvement study that will increase travel time and safety. Currently, the 1.6 mile stretch of tracks in Del Mar is located dangerously close to the edge of the bluffs, and several bluff failures within feet of the tracks have occurred over the past couple of years. With the bluffs eroding at approximately 6 inches per year and the ever intensifying threat of sea level rise due to the climate crisis, these incredibly dangerous bluff failures will only increase in severity and frequency, putting lives seriously at risk. We need a transportation system that is climate safe and climate ready. Moving the tracks off the bluffs is essential to securing a long-term solution for the LOSSAN corridor, all while reducing greenhouse gas emissions, especially with the zero-emission vehicles, preventing increased air pollution from trucks, and ensuring economic prosperity in the region for decades. Thank you.
Thank you, Noah. Next is Nicole Burgess, who will be followed by the Surfrider Foundation.
Good morning, board members of Transportation Board and Chair Nora Vargas. Appreciate Linda Culp staff for the presentation, thorough presentation, and just want to reiterate Noah's comments and the urgency to move these tracks off the bluffs. I appreciate all the great work Sandag's doing. And just one quick comment on as we identify and evaluate these corridors and as fast is kind of a criteria. I just want to reemphasize that once we get on these public subway connections, that's just kind of like, you know, I know it's important, but really connectivity to our destinations and safe connections is actually more critical. I think once we get on trolley and transit is comfortable and we can now handle the extra minute or two in that transit connection rather than we need the safe connections once we get to our destinations. Thank you so much, staff, for working on this and board for urging the movement of these off the bus as soon as possible.
Thank you. And our final comment will be from Surfrider Foundation.
Hi, my name is Laura Walsh, policy staff for Surfrider Foundation in San Diego. Calling in to thank staff for the rail corridor improvement study update and to just quickly comment on Del Mar realignment as well. We'd just like to acknowledge the study and support any action to move it forward and to look at implementing next steps, particularly in pursuing funding for the realignment in Del Mar as well. The faster this section of track is realigned, the less disastrous coastal access and beach erosion impacts we'll see as a result of aggressive but ultimately temporary stabilization methods. Surfrider exists to protect the coastline, and that has naturally led us to become stewards for responsible sea level rise planning in the region. Up and down the coast, we see countless instances of cities approaching the imminent threats of sea level rise and erosion by waiting for disaster to happen. This isn't something we can allow when it comes to this corridor, especially this section running along Del Mar's sensitive coastal bluffs. So thank you for your work and look forward to working with you guys.
Thank you, and Chair, that concludes the public comments.
Thank you. I think I saw Member Edison. Yes.
Yes, thank you. I have a few questions. This is the second time I've had the good fortune of actually seeing this. I was in the meeting on Monday too, and you learn a lot new every day because this is quite a bit of material, and I thank staff for the thoroughness, and it's an amazing presentation. So timing, I heard Hamish say today in the next 20 years when the tunnels come online. So are we stating this is going to be a reality in 20 years?
Thank you for that question. I think if we have a theoretical answer, I guess, more if we had funding today, and we do not pass the study, but if we did, we have an estimate of, maybe 4 to 6 years to get it to a point where it could get into construction, and probably about that long for construction. We have been coordinating our efforts with the draft regional plan, and we have the Del Mar Tunnel in that 2035 phase of that draft regional plan, for example, and we have a Miramar tunnel in the later phase of the plan. So those are sort of our overall guiding documents, but it is pending funding.
Okay, and the funding that we're looking for is two types of funding, is that correct? Both further study funding and also then once we know what we are ready to build, construction funding?
Yeah, we're not in, for example, an environmental process quite yet. So it would be, that would be our next phase of work, is to get the two alternatives into more preliminary engineering and head into an environmental process. There'd be a lot of technical documents that would be needed and that kind of thing in support of the document. Once we had it environmentally cleared, then we could work on the final design and permitting, and then that would be ready for construction. So there's a lot of steps between now and getting it out to construction.
I thought that was the case, but I just wanted to check because, our speakers are asking us to do this ASAP. And I think that it's important that they understand that there's a process. It's not just breaking ground tomorrow if we get funding. Expectations, right? We always want to manage expectations. There was one of the other things in Hamish's presentation was Del Mar Tunnel branch line, Miramar Tunnel alternatives. There wasn't really any discussion of the branch line and no details provided. Is that something that's more TBD, or can you expand on that?
I can, for right now, just let you know what it is we're working on. We don't have that analysis quite ready, but we'll have that ready in a few months, and we can always come back or present that. We do need to talk to the project development team about that once as well still. But what we have been working on is through a couple of efforts, this effort on the LOSSAN corridor, and then our South Bay to Sereno CMCP work. And then what sort of rail service and what might it look like serving a future Sereno Mesa mobility hub? And, now we stop, if we're a coastal rider, we stop in Sereno Valley, we need to catch a shuttle or get a ride over to a lot of that major employment area on the Mesa. And so what we've been exploring at a very high level is how to serve that directly with rail. And it would be rail from the LOSSAN corridor in terms of that branch line, and it would be rail coming up from that South Bay into the Sereno area. So we're combining efforts. We don't have the analysis quite finished yet, but that's one thing we could definitely bring back in the near future.
Okay, and just a couple of more questions regarding the ZMUs versus chargers. And I asked a question about the ZMUs at the Monday meeting, and it might be worthwhile to repeat the answer to that, because I think that I'm not the only person that might have that question. But my other questions today are the relative costs between the ZMUs and chargers.
Yeah, I might ask Hamish to answer. So Hamish, perhaps talk about the catenary, no catenary side of that equipment, and then talk about cost if you can. Not sure if Hamish is still on. To the first question, I think, we show that vehicle that Caltrain has purchased, the Stadler vehicle, and we showed it as a catenary, electrified but catenary, and that's certainly their equipment that they're working on. We could look at some other, hydrogen fuel cell or something like that, non-catenary system as a future type of equipment. I think the diesel locomotives are with us for a bit. We are purchasing a couple of more train sets for the coaster, for example, and they'll be in operation for quite a while. And then I'll just need to get back to you in terms of the cost difference. I'm not quite sure on that question.
Okay, well, thank you. And my next question was actually, regionally, these tier 1 Siemens chargers are just coming online. What is the anticipated life time of the chargers?
Yeah, again, I might defer if Hamish is there, or if Matt wants to. I think I saw Matt Tucker if he wanted to talk to that.
Hey,
if not,
Linda,
I can follow up.
I'm here. The useful life of the new Tier 4 locomotives that we've received and will be receiving is 27 years. We have already been advancing the studies in collaboration with BNSF and with Metra in Chicago looking at the next generation of vehicles, likely a near zero or a zero emission vehicle. The first time you'll see it will be for the replacement of the Sprinter fleet. That fleet is diesel tier 2 technology, so second generation tier technology. That fleet needs to be replaced by 2033, 2034. So we've already gotten some concepts, but one of the things for clarity, we're not looking at any catenary based solution. It may be catenary at terminal stations only, but not a catenary system throughout any rail network. There are significant added costs associated with that level of construction and maybe would undo some projects that the region has already done. And so our focus is going to be non-catenary based near zero or zero emissions technology.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate that. And I think that's it for me right now.
Fantastic. Mr. Benelli?
Thank you, Chair. Linda and team, as always, thank you for the very informative presentation. And I always like to reiterate, I appreciate Sandag working with the port and always talking about not only passengers, but freight. And as been noted earlier, we move more than $1 billion worth of product through that rail corridor. And Mr. Tuck and I were talking via email this week too, just as 2 points of references here, down at the National City Marine Terminal, as well as our 10th Avenue Marine Terminal. Over the next 10 years, pre-pandemic, we were moving about 450,000 car units out of National City. Over the next 10 years, we hope to have that doubled. And in the 10th Avenue Marine Terminal, with building products and food and a bunch of other steel products and stuff moving on the rail corridor, we hope to quadruple that over the next 10 years. So that adds another level of challenge to get through that freight corridor. And Linda, I would invite you, no hurry on this, but at Sandag team, come over to the Board of Commissioners and make that presentation. I think they would find it very valuable. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments, we're going to go ahead and go to our next item. Item number 9. And thank you again to all of the Sandag team for this great presentation, so thorough. I wish we can, move things much quicker than, 20 years, but we'll keep at it. Item number 9 is the second reading of proposed amendments to the Regional Transit Comprehensive Fare Ordinance. The Transportation Committee is asked to adopt resolution number 2021-19 related to supporting a California Environmental Quality Act exception for the proposed amendments to the Comprehensive Fare Ordinance and conduct the second reading and approve amendments to the Regional Comprehensive Fare Ordinance by reading the title of ordinance. This is the second of 2 readings for the Fare Ordinance. The Transportation Committee, as you remember, voted on April 2nd to waive full readings of the Fare Ordinance. To proceed, we need to read the title today and then vote to approve the staff recommendations. Please note that the amended portions of the ordinance are included in your agenda items. Mr. Brian Lane will provide an update on the Title 6 analysis and the CEQA exception, and then read the full title of the Fare Ordinance as well as the recommendation before us today. Mr. Lane?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, committee. Like Chair said, at the April 2nd Transportation Committee meeting, I presented the changes to the fares, but I didn't get the chance to present or discuss the attached Title 6 analysis. Attachment 3 of your report includes that analysis, and there's a lot in there. But the key thing is that staff and the staff at the transit agencies knew we needed to be conservative in terms of introducing this best fare technology, the fare capping, and this free transfers, and knowing that cash riders would not be able to utilize this new technology because it does need a smart card to get those best fares. And over a year ago, staff at both agencies realized the need to start digging into this and find ways to mitigate and look at alternatives to ensure that we're being equitable throughout the region. And so what they did was really dig into expanding that retail network from where it is today to a massive increase in the future. As soon as this starts rolling out, they'll be rolling out the retail network to, they hope up to 400 locations. In that attachment is a detailed analysis of where those locations are and ensuring that it's distributed equitably. So MTS and NCD will be working with retailers and vendors to to get the Pronto card ability to add cash at many, many locations. And MTS and NCTD will be working over the coming months as they roll out Pronto to ensure that all riders understand where they can get the card. They'll be getting the card into people's hands for free during that transaction period, making sure they understand it, working with CBOs and stakeholders to get those cards out. So I think we've done a good job of mitigating potential impacts to that part. And then the other fare changes, you know, the only really other fare change is the youth decrease. So no social impacts there, and we're happy to report that. Lastly, the CEQA allows for the exemption of the fare change if it's for the purposes of meeting operating expenses. Attachment 4 lists the basis for the exemption, and notably that the changes are required to provide MTS and NCTD the ability to revise fares for purposes of implementing Pronto, reducing youth one-way fares, and adding free transfers. So I'll now read the recommendation and then the title before you today. The Transportation Committee is asked to 1, adopt resolution number 2021-19, attachment 4, related to findings supporting a California Environmental Quality Act exemption for the proposed amendments to the Comprehensive Fare Ordinance, and 2, conduct a second reading and approve amendments to the Regional Comprehensive Fare Ordinance by reading the title of the ordinance. So the ordinance before you today is titled San Diego Association of Governments Comprehensive Fare Ordinance, an ordinance establishing a regional fare pricing schedule. And with that quick report, Chair, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all the hard work. I'm going to turn it over to the public first before we do any of member comments. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Chair. We do have several public comments. I see 7 hands thus far. Oh, I apologize. They're still going up. We'll go ahead and get started with the first commenter, who will be Michael Horgan, and Michael will be followed by B. Mittermiller.
Hello, do you hear me? Hello,
Yes,
do you
we
hear
can.
me?
Thank you.
Thank you for having this presentation. I think it's going to be really good. I support the Pronto card, and I think it'll be very beneficial to the San Diego region, especially with reducing the youth fares for one-way. And yeah, I also support the idea of having a 90-day transition period instead of a 1-month period, because I think there's going to be people that may not get the idea that Compass is being replaced with this new card. And I also support the new expanded increase of the distribution network. And yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you for having me speak on this item. And I hope this gets approved. Bye.
Thank you very much. Next will be B. Mittermiller, followed by Yasmin Obeid.
Hi, good morning, Chair Vargas, Vice Chair Campillo, and members of the committee. This is B. Mittermiller from San Diego 350. I'm speaking to support the adoption of the amendment of the Comprehensive Fare Ordinance and the approval of the CEQA exemption. Also, thank you for committing to the ongoing equity analysis to ensure that any negative impacts of the Pronto system on disadvantaged populations will be properly mitigated. And that's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next will be Yasmin Obeid, followed by Carolina.
Hello, good morning. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Wonderful. Hello, everyone, and good morning. Assalamu alaikum to any of my Muslim fellows out there. Ramadan Mubarak. My name is Yasmin Abid, and I'm the youth organizer with Mid-City CAN. I want to urge you all to approve these fare changes as a step forward towards transportation equity in San Diego. This community appreciates the time you are taking to listen into our needs, and we are excited for these changes as another step toward the youth opportunity passes no cost transportation for young people up to the age of 24. This is really critical, and we hope you all keep that in mind. And we look forward to the inclusion of YOP in the new regional transportation plan. Thank you and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you very much. Next is Carolina, who will be followed by Michelle Krug.
Good morning. My name is Carolina with the Environmental Health Coalition and the San Diego Transportation Equity Working Group. We're here to ask you to support the ordinance. We've been talking about this for some time, and it is exciting that the proposed ordinance is a reflection of what the community needs at this time. So we ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we do have 7 additional public speakers. Next will be Michelle Krug, followed by Chris.
Good morning. Thank you for, as everyone.
I think we might have lost Michelle's connection. Michelle, if you're able to raise your hand again, we'll call on you again in just a few minutes. Let's go ahead with Chris, who will be followed by Women's First Step House.
Thank you so much. Good morning, folks. Chris Sotomayor, Mid-City Can, pronouns they, them, AJ. I want to thank you so much, folks, in advance for choosing to pass this fair ordinance. I know it is a step toward equity in transportation in San Diego. Our community members need it, our working families need it, our youth need it. We know that a willful choice and a decrease in income for y'all is a hard choice to make, and we understand you folks also often get a lot more thorns than you do roses. So we want to be intentional about thanking you folks. And also, I want to leave you with a story. I checked in with one of our community members that's been working in our ITCH Transportation Momentum team for, I believe, the entire 10 years or close to it. And I was explaining to her, that we're going to call in and thank you folks and show appreciation for the step in the right direction. And just to be frank with you, her response to me was, honestly, Chris, I think it's some bull that we have to call in and thank these folks for giving us not even half of what we've been asking for. And she's not wrong. You know what I mean? She's absolutely not wrong. This community is tired of waiting, but I definitely want to reiterate that we're really excited for this as just one more step. But that our goal is and will continue to be the inclusion of youth opportunity passes for folks up to the age of 24 in the regional transportation plan. Thank you folks for your time today and have a great weekend.
Thank you. Next, we're going to go to Women's First Step House, and then I'll come back to Michelle Krug.
Hi, I apologize that is an icon from another meeting that I join regularly. My name is Laurel Evans Smith. I'm a resident of Solana Beach. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Laurel Evans Smith. I'm a resident of Solana Beach, and I would like to ask Council Member Joel Edson, representing the North County Transit District, to vote in favor of the recommendations for the Regional Transportation Fare Ordinance. We want a unified regional transportation system between North and South County, and we want to support decreased fares for youth and senior citizens. I would like North County to live up to having an equitable transportation system so that our neighbors who depend on public transit in San Diego County can travel easily and wherever they need to go. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll go to Michelle Krug, who will be followed by Randy Torres Van Black.
Did it work this time?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. And I do want to thank you. I know granted the incremental change, and I do appreciate that very much. There's many things in this ordinance that I think are incredibly innovative and moving forward. I do want to encourage to look at the 90 days implementation rather than the 30 days. Seniors and disabled people like myself are not gonna, we're still not going out very much. And I think that it will make that an easier transition. And I just would really, the other thing, I forgot the other issue. So thank you very much for this ordinance. And thank you for moving forward.
Thank you. We have 5 remaining speakers. Next will be Randy Torres Van Black, followed by Noah.
Good morning, Transportation Committee members and staff. My name is Randy Torres Van Vleck. I'm the Director of Policy and Planning at the City CDC. We are members of the San Diego Transportation Equity Working Group, and we're here today to speak in favor of the staff recommendation to approve the changes to the regional fare policy. The recommendation before you calls for the Pronto fare system with best fare capabilities, reduction in youth one-way fares, no cost transfers that last up to 2 hours. These fare changes are being made without increasing fare costs for riders. This is going to make transit riding more affordable and easier for riders throughout the region. We're happy to be here today to support these changes. As pointed out, the Title VI fare equity analysis was released earlier in the week. Several takeaways from that, including the fact that riders who rely on cash will not be able to benefit from most of the changes without the app or card. And some riders use the tips they made at work that night to get home on transit. So it's important that the retail locations for the Pronto cards are spread throughout the region with heavy concentrations in communities who ride transit the most, with retail locations near major transit lines. We also encourage the board to suspend enforcement for the first few months during the transition from Compass to Pronto. In regards to the 5 big moves, we're hoping to see no cost fare scenarios including youth opportunity passes for those 24 and under. Thank you once again to staff for bringing this progressive fare policy forward. This is a major milestone for transportation justice in our region. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next will be Noah. The person following Noah, all I see is Galaxy S9. I'm not sure of your name, but you'll be following Noah. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. This is Noah Harris from Climate Action Campaign, calling to thank SANDAG board and staff for today's updates to the Regional Transit Comprehensive Fare Ordinance, including reducing the cost of youth fares, adding free transfers, providing the best fare functionality, and stopping any potential fare increases. These changes will help us build a more equitable and accessible transportation system for all, while increasing ridership and reducing greenhouse gas emissions from the transportation sector. We urge the board to take the next step of including youth opportunity passes in this year's regional transportation plan update. YOP, no cost transit passes for youth 24 and under, is an essential investment that community members have been calling for a decade. YOP will increase access to education, activities, and employment for our youth, all while helping to build a more equitable and accessible transportation future in San Diego. And thanks again for today's updates.
Thank you. Next is Galaxy S9, who will be followed by Tristan.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, my name is Maria Cortez, and I am with the City Heights Development Corporation and also with Mid-City CAN. I am one of the co-chairs, and I have been fighting for this for over 10 years now. And I am glad to say that I am happy that you will be having the reduced youth fares for one way. We are also working for the 24 years of age and under to have free transit. I just want to say thank you so much. I approve what is going to be happening today. Also supporting the Pronto fare. I'm one of those that is going to have to learn how to do things. It's going to take us a while, but we will get there. And also I am in support of the no cost transfers, which we really need. And I am just wanting to support the 5 big moves, and also letting you know that by doing this, this is a step in the right direction. You will be getting more people on board, not only just us older adults, but also youth that need to take the opportunity to ride the bus and also the trolley to find out how it is. And I am just so happy that this is coming through for a long time. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Tristan, who will be followed by Deja.
Yes, good morning, folks. My name is Tristan Hartley and my pronouns are he, they. I live in District 9. I currently work as a therapist here locally in San Diego with many youth. And I just want to urge the passing of the fare changes, as I know personally this will benefit the youth and their families so much. I know this is a step towards transportation equity in San Diego, and I just want to thank you all in advance. I also want to name that this is just a first step towards the YOP, our Youth Opportunity Passes for all youth up to the ages of 24. Many of the students that I currently work with at San Diego City College use public transportation to go to school every day, and then they use it to go to work. I want you to know these reported commutes take over 2.5 hours, and that's just one way, right? These young folks are working so hard for their futures. And I think it's the least we can do as one of the largest cities in the world to offer free transportation to our young people up to the age of 24. I really look forward to the inclusion of YOP in the regional transportation plan. And I just want to thank you all in advance again. Thank you for your time and for your service to our community.
Thank you. And our last public speaker will be Deja.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Deja Cabrera. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I live in fabulous District 3. I currently work as a sexual health educator here in San Diego, and with many of my clients being between the ages of 18 to 24. So I can fully appreciate this fare changes, and I believe it's a step forward towards equity here in San Diego. So yes, sorry, I'm really nervous. This community appreciates the time you are taking in listening to our needs, and we are excited for these changes and other steps towards YOP, no-cost transportation for young people up to the age of 24. So thank you again for your time, and we look forward to the inclusion of YOP in new regional transportation plans.
Thank you, Deja. And Chair, that concludes the public comments.
Thank you so much. And thank you for everyone that called in this morning. I'm going to turn it over first to, we have, I think it's Edson. I see your hand right up.
Yes, thank you. As I mentioned at the last meeting, in the March NCTD Board of Directors unanimously recommended the fare changes before us today. And during the first reading discussion here at TC, I shared NCTD's support for the recommended changes to the fare ordinance. I also shared that the potential loss in annual customer revenue to NCTD from these changes is estimated to be as much as $567,000, but that NCTD staff is confident that our FY 2021-22 budget can be balanced without an increase in fares, which is good news. But I wouldn't be doing my job representing NCTD if I did not remind all of us that both NCTD and MTS are subject to performance requirements tied to fare box recovery. If our agencies do not meet TDA fare box recovery requirements, we will be subject to penalties under California Public Utilities Code section 99268.9. That said, and not wanting to end on a cautionary note or a downer, in addition to supporting the proposed amendments before us today, I also wanted to share that on March 18th during the NCTD board meeting, we asked staff for an overview of youth fare subsidy programs and potential funding opportunities. The reduction in youth fares has been a matter of some interest, as we've heard from speakers here today, and much discussion both here and at NCTD. The good news is that the comprehensive fare ordinance allows for pilot fare subsidy programs for up to a year before changes to the comprehensive fare ordinance will be required. And while that isn't a permanent solution, it might be a way for us to move in that direction. I look forward to receiving more information at the May 20th NCTD board meeting, and I'm hopeful that funding can be identified for such a pilot program. With that, I'd be happy to move approval if this is a voting item. Thanks.
It is a voting item, and so I thank you for your motion. I have a couple of other hands up. Mr. Sankey.
Thank you very much, Chair. I would second the motion, number one, and thank all the positive comments that came in to us and all the written comments that I read this morning in the email. It's not often that we have so many roses. We're kind of used to getting a few thorns. I continue to hear the call for the youth opportunity passes. I continue as a personal interest in, as a policymaker, trying to wrap my arms around what that means, and how, as an agency, we can afford it. We've looked at this particular fare change costing the agencies between $4 and $5 million. I know that if we look at the average fare paid by people on our system being about $1 now for each ride, even though our overall fare is $2.50, if you add in all the discount programs, and both for elderly and disabled, as well as our youth programs now, the average fare paid is $1. I don't know how much lower. I personally, as a good in conscience policymaker, want to make that cost, because I think people appreciate something they contribute to more than something they get for free. Anyway, that said, I second the motion and look forward to supporting this fare ordinance, and look forward to the next fare ordinance when we can actually incorporate some additional transportation modes, for example, waterborne transportation, into our regional system of transportation, not just as a novelty, but as an integral part of moving people around our region. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Montgomery Steppe.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to briefly thank staff for this item and also for the Title VI Fair Equity Analysis. I'm always appreciative of that report and the mitigating factors that it included, especially when we're talking about transitioning over to the Pronto system. I agree that we need to expand ways in which folks can purchase the card through the retail network, and we should include as many stores as we can, Northgate Market, Food for Less, Walgreens, Rite Aid, Ralph's, as many places where people can retrieve that would cause less confusion on the line as we go through the transition. So that's really the only other thing I want to stress is the educational piece. I think that's going to be very, very, very important, and I'll be tracking these mitigation efforts as we move forward and as that system is implemented, but I certainly support the item. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I don't see any other comments, but I wanted to personally just thank all of the community organizations and the callers today for all the years of advocacy. I'm absolutely pleased to hear that community voices, and especially because they were uplifted during this ordinance. I really do continue to encourage a robust community engagement plan to help transition our communities to this new technology. And we've heard from a couple of folks in terms of the expansion of some times and days so that people, can get more used to this. This fair ordinance recommendation is absolutely, I think, going to increase readership across all of our systems. I'm so pleased to support it. And like I mentioned before from the last committee meeting, I absolutely encourage SANDAG and staff to really bring forward the youth opportunity passes, no cost transit passes for our youth 24 and under in our region. It's going to create a generation of new transit riders as we're developing a new vision for our regional plan. So thank you again for everyone who was engaged in this process. We have a motion and we have a second, so I'm going to turn over to the clerk for a vote.
Thank you, Chair. For the San Diego County Regional Airport Authority, Gil Cabrera.
Yes.
Thank you. For the City of San Diego, Vice Chair Campillo.
Yes.
Thank you. For the County of San Diego, Chair Vargas.
Vargas, yes.
Thank you. For East County, Councilmember Mendoza.
Yes.
Thank you. For Metropolitan Transit System, Councilmember Montgomery Steppe.
Yes.
Thank you. For North County Coastal, Councilmember Zito.
Zito, yes.
Thank you. For North County Inland, Mayor McNamara.
McNamara, yes.
Thank you. For North County Transit District, Councilmember Edson.
Edson, yes.
Thank you. For the Port of San Diego, Commissioner Benelli.
Benelli, yes.
Thank you. And for South County, Councilmember Sankey.
Sankey, yes.
Thank you. And that does pass unanimously.
I feel like we should clap. Really excited about this one. Item number 10 is the Mid-Coast Trolley Project update. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Ramon Ruelas. This is an overview of the Mid-Coast Trolley Project and other projects concurrently underway in the corridor. He will be presenting next. Mr. Ruelas.
Good morning, Chair Vargas, Vice Chair Campillo, and members of the Transportation Committee. Today, I'll be presenting you with an update on the Mid-Coast Trolley Project. Next slide, please. So as a reminder, the project is an 11-mile extension to existing track from just south of the San Diego River to the terminus at the UTC Transit Center. The project includes construction of 9 new stations, 5 of which include parking, and includes the acquisition of 36 new trolley cars. We've continued to make very good progress on the project, even with the challenges of working through the pandemic, and we are on course to start revenue service in late 2021. And we still expect to finish within the $2.17 billion budget. Next slide, please. Our construction contractor, Midcoast Transit Constructors, is approaching being 90% complete with construction. The focus of the recent efforts have involved working on applying some of the finishing touches at all the stations, advancing work associated with the 2 parking structures, punching out the track work, installing landscaping and irrigation throughout the alignment, setting the overhead catenary wire, and in completing the rail signal work. Next slide, please. This milestone schedule has been a model of consistency with relatively minor changes from our initial baseline schedule that had been developed towards the latter part of 2016. In slightly over 2 months, we anticipate that the overhead catenary will be energized and control of the trackway will be turned over to MTS so they can pull a train out and start performing their initial tests along the entire 11 miles of new track. At around that same time, our contractor intends to have the first 7.5 miles of the alignment totally completed, including all 3 stations, the 2 park and ride lots, and as well as its landscaping too. All of this will be turned over to MTS at that time too. Next slide, please. So despite COVID, the project has continued to be a huge boost to the local economy. So far as it has employed over 4,500 workers on site and has paid out over $182 million in wages. Next slide, please. Our prime contractor, next slide. There we go. Our prime contractor, MCTC, continues to utilize disadvantaged businesses at a rate that will exceed the established contract goal of 11.3% DBE participation. At the end of the first quarter of this year, they're showing an attainment of 12.55% DBE participation. Next slide, please. Project risks continue to exist. This table reflects some of the major risks and the potential impacts to the project that we're continuing to monitor. Construction costs and other unknown risks continues to diminish as we get closer and closer to being open to the public. Adverse costs or schedule impacts resulting from the effects of COVID have not materialized, and I'd like to think that we'll be able to eliminate this as a risk item from the table the next time I come to you for a project update. Next slide, please. So since we last presented, we have restored Friars Road to the condition it was before we started construction. 2 lanes in each direction are open to traffic, and the responsibility of the roadway have shifted back over to the city of San Diego. We started construction of the UTC Transit Center parking structure, and in fact, this morning we started placing the initial concrete for that structure. Construction of the Nobel Drive Trolley Station parking structure was completed and open for use in February. Station construction continues to be a priority. The design finishes, variable message sign support structures, shelter canopies, and lighting fixtures are all in different stages of being placed at all the stations. Landscaping and signal work also continue at various locations throughout the alignment. Next slide, please. So moving on to construction progress. So this is the Tecolote station. This station is almost 90% complete. The striping of the lot, finishing the canopy shelters, and setting of the detectable warning pavers on the platform are some of what remains to be done here. Next slide, please. Here you can see the work involved in setting the screen wall tiles. This work is now complete, and our contractor has covered the tile work with black plastic sheeting to help protect it from damage and vandalism. Next slide, please. This is an aerial view of the Claremont Drive station. Work at this station is about 85% complete. Next slide, please. As in the last station, you can see the contractor doing the screen wall tile at this location as well. This work has been completed, and like the other location, is covered with plastic sheeting too. Next slide, please. This is a shot of the Balboa Avenue Transit Center. This station is also about 85% complete. Now, some of the ongoing work activities here include installing the landscape and irrigation and the barrier railing at the platform. Next slide, please. Screen walls are popular in this presentation. Here's the one at the Balboa station. It shows the tile work all done at that location too. Next slide. This shot is of the Nobel Drive trolley station and parking structure. This station is about 70% complete. As I previously mentioned, the parking structure is open for use, but there's some remaining work to be done before we can say that it is 100% complete. Work activities at this location involve installing the elevator, grading the lower level plaza area, and making surface lot improvements within the mall. Next slide, please. Here's a shot of the VA Medical Center trolley station. This station is about 85% complete. Work at this station has slowed lately. Contractor has been using this station as a high rail access point to allow vehicles better access to the elevated section of the guideway to perform their work. Next slide. Again, this is another slide showing the tile work that is being placed on the walls at this station. Next slide, please. This is the newly labeled UC San Diego Central Campus Trolley Station. This station is slightly over 80% complete. Work activities related to this station include completing the elevators and installing the stair steel structures that lead up to the station platform. In this photograph, the stairway structural steel adjacent to the elevator is in the process of being set. The staircase at the south end of the station has not yet been placed in this photograph. Next slide, please. Now here is the stairway steel structure that is to be set at the south end of the station. In this photograph, the structural steel is in the process of getting prepared for final paint before it's delivered to the site. Next slide, please. Here's a newly labeled UC San Diego Health La Jolla Trolley Station. This station is about 85% complete. Of significance here is the work surrounding the station. Campus Point Drive has been realigned and improvements along Voight Drive are nearing completion. I understand we may be having an event next week to recognize completion of Campus Point Drive realignment and the other surface street improvements surrounding the station. Next slide, please. This photograph is of the Executive Drive Trolley Station, which is, like many of the other ones, about 85% complete. Work activities at this location include installing the elevators, stairways, light fixtures, and the canopy roofing. Next slide, please. So this is one of the steel structures that lead up to the platform at that location. In this photograph, the contractor is in the process of putting in some of the lighting fixtures. Next slide, please. This is a shot of the UTC Transit Center and the station parking structure. This is the last station on the alignment and it sits about 71% complete. Most of the work activities at this station are related to installing the elevators and the canopy roofs. Next slide. And this is the last construction progress photograph I'm sharing, and it shows the advanced grading work that was done recently at the UTC Transit Center. Work is progressing well, and as I said before, we had our initial concrete pour start this morning. Next slide. So I do have a video to present, I hope. So, we try to meet with the executive leadership from UCC, Caltrans, and MTS on a quarterly basis to update them on matters associated with the progress of all the work and weekend operations in and surrounding the university. We shared a longer version of this video at that meeting, not only to illustrate how close we are to having our mutual improvements completed, but also to demonstrate the level of success we've been able to achieve by working closely together in a collaborative manner to implement our respective improvements with as little disruption and inconvenience to the university while they work to fulfill their mission. I said before that the university has been a fantastic partner on this project and has not been shy about sharing their thoughts on the value of the two trolley stations bring to the university and its surrounding community. Mr. Gary Matthews, UCSD's Vice Chancellor for Resource Management and Planning, went so far as to say that the introduction of trolley service to the university is something that is transformative to the entire campus. Their vision and plans for what the campus will look like, especially surrounding the trolley alignment, has evolved into something much different from what it was when we first started construction. This evolution has certainly created challenges, but with the dedication of the entire project team of consultants, our contractors and staff, and the encouragement from leadership from all the agencies, we've been able to accommodate many of the changes with minimal disruption to the work. So through the construction management general contractor model, the contractor for Midcoast Trolley has been able to work with Sandag on several concurrent projects within the corridor. In the first quarter of this year, we achieved a significant milestone by completing another one of these concurrent projects, the Gilman Drive Bridge. The next project we expect to complete and open is the improved Rose Creek Bikeway, which is scheduled for next month. Lastly, the Voight Drive Improvements Project continues to progress and is anticipated to be complete in fall of 2021. Later this month, we'll be opening lanes on Voight Drive and the newly realigned Campus Point Drive. This project is a joint effort of Caltrans, UC San Diego, and Sandag, and will realign Campus Point Drive to improve access to the future UC San Diego Health La Jolla Trolley Station. Next slide, please. So since we last met, crews completed the installation of community signage and lighting on the Gilman Drive Bridge. This past February, the university had a ceremonial lighting of the bridge and signage to mark the occasion of applying the finishing touches to the bridge. The lighting is now turned on every day at dusk. Next slide, please. So public outreach efforts continue, but our processes have been modified due to COVID-19. Construction tours and in-person media events have been mostly postponed, although we recently have been able to accommodate on-site meetings with some of our project stakeholders. We continue to provide regularly scheduled virtual updates to several community planning groups, as well as city council staff from districts that are directly impacted by project construction. Lastly, opening day planning efforts are actively underway as the project nears its anticipated completion in late 2021. Our communications and community outreach team has been working closely with our partners at MTS and UC San Diego in the planning efforts. They have also been busy working on coordinating a number of lead-up events to help generate some excitement and start informing the community that they will soon have a new transportation option for getting to where they want to go. We remain hopeful that COVID-19 will not prevent us from having this historic project get the in-person celebration it deserves. Next slide, please. So that concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ruelas. Any public comments?
No, Chair, I don't see any hands from the public.
All right, any member comments? Seeing none. Thank you so much, Mr. Ruelas, for that thorough presentation. A lot of exciting things happening. Seeing that there are no other member comments, with that, our next Transportation Committee meeting is scheduled for Friday, May 7th, 2021 at 9 a.m. and we'll be a joint meeting with our Regional Planning and Borders Committee. So I'm really excited about that. And with that, we are adjourned. Have a wonderful day.